No.
Right. Can that be seen? Hoping that that is viewable to everybody. Good. Right. So yeah, a little bit about me to start with. As Vince mentioned there, I came to Coventry in 2012 to study architectural technology at Coventry University. I graduated from there after 3 years full-time in 2015, and I've worked at IDP since. I chartered as a technologist in the end of 2017, and then about a year after that, I studied what's called the Reba Studio course, which is more traditional architecture, towards the end of 2018. And how that works is it's a distance learning course. So I was basically completing the course while I was still in practice. A little bit about the project. It's mainly an academic one. It's meant to start a conversation around the site, how it can be used, its faults, its benefits. So because it's an academic thing, it doesn't really have any tangible real conclusion to it. It's meant to be an ongoing development and nothing more really. And of course the city centre south plans and what's happened recently with IKEA have basically added to the conversation since this design proposal went live. So the focus of it was the regeneration of the Brewers building, the circular concrete Coventry Market, and doing it through biodiverse urban green space. So the first thing that I did was to give my examiners a little bit of context about Coventry. And Coventry is a city, in my opinion, of a lot of change. It's gone through lots of phases. It's had a lot of demolitions in its past, some more total than others, and it's had a lot of rebirths as well. It's no kind of surprise to any of us that the university's symbol is a phoenix. And we're kind of living in what I kind of term the reborn Coventry at the minute, whereas I imagine quite a lot of phases probably would have considered the same. And a lot of investment is going into culture and leisure outputs at the minute. I don't need to tell you this, but for my examiner's sake, I identified where the market was, and kind of important just for us to note is it actually includes a vacant plot of land on Queen Victoria Road here. And it also is actually sited in a very, very good place. And we'll get to that in a bit. Primarily, it's due to the land use. So as part of these studies, I did two focus studies, one on the land use of the interior of the city inside the ring road, and then also the materials used by the architecture. See top left here in blue is commercial space, and it's linked with a lot of other commercial areas, and that is actually very, very, well, tends to be very, very good. As much as it's shown that companies do compete with each other, it is also shown in even more surveys that it brings people into an area. So it kind of, it doesn't decrease demand, it allows businesses to thrive. In terms of the residential space, which isn't really a focus for this design proposal, there's very, very little low density residential space, and it's being eked out from a high rise, especially more student-led developments. Leisure space, we're seeing City of Culture bid win, and also the unveiling recently of the Fargo Village Cultural Quarter outside the city centre, but no less important. Really seeing a new drive and a new kind of identifier for the city of Coventry. The market site is, of course, located adjacent to the Sky, well, almost adjacent to the Sky Dome and Planet Ice. And then a key aspect is the green space in the city, and identify two large kind of wedges there. Greyfriars Green near the train station, which is obviously the new development as you walk through from the train station to the Broadgate, and then also Lady Herbert's Gardens. I want to draw attention to these because Greyfriars Green suffers from what I call kind of like a passing through trade, which, because there's so few and so tiny pockets of greenery around the city, people can largely feel quite uncomfortable sitting in spaces where they are being surveyed constantly by passerbyers. This isn't so much the case in Lady Herbert's Gardens, but the locality of that being quite separated to the site means that it is a potential to create a green space in this area, and market it, or kind of like aim it more towards creating an intimate space where someone would feel very comfortable going for lunch or sitting for hours, rather than being perhaps surveyed by people who are going from A to B. So they're the four kind of key areas in terms of the land use that I've identified within the city. There are of course many more or different blurred lines between those, but that's what's identified and shown to be important for this. In terms of the materials, I focused on the sandstone materiality, which is medieval primarily. The cathedral is obviously in it, and these are sometimes capped off in the second material identified, which is a weathered copper or a green travertine stone. The travertine stone obviously in the upper and lower precincts, and also in the old Telegraph building as well. And then finally, perhaps the most pertinent of the materials identified is the grey concrete, which the market is in itself. A lot of these buildings, especially the high-rise ones that have been knocked down or in the process of being knocked down, and I think perhaps rightly or wrongly, negatively or positively, it's viewed outside Coventry as a very deterministic view of the city. It is very, very much linked with concrete. And then finally, just a note there to say that it is in a regeneration area. We've mentioned City South already, and it is basically fertile ground for thought around what can we do, both on a massing scale, so a large term scale, and also individual buildings and how that relates to architecture. Again, this is kind of, I imagine, teaching a lot of you to suck eggs. You know the site quite well, but the things that I want to point out as part of my presentation were the fact that the hoarding and the vacant site next to it is overgrown, is underutilised, it is an eyesore, and the low profile of the market basically means that the hoarding from Queen Victoria Road and from where you're standing outside IKEA, and even more, as view 3 shows, towards the Ring Road, it is hidden from view. And you're really missing a very key visual link from that area to the market, which is going to be utilised in the design. Moving a bit closer and also onto the other side of the market, we have one of my pet peeves with the site, which is that the main kind of pedestrian way, if you're not going to go through the market, if you're going to go around the outside of it, is through a back of house area. There are a lot of commercial vehicles that are constantly moving, it seems, and this is supposed to be, well, has ended up being a main thoroughfare. And aside from its poor visual connection with the interior, aside from it looking a bit run down, it is quite unsafe. So that is one of the key considerations. And then view 5 and view 6 are just to point out 2 different areas where I intend to connect, talking about visual connection again, because at the moment it's done simply through signage. You can see kind of I'm not sure how to describe that truthfully, a dish on a stick signage, which is outdated in a sense. It has its own merit, design merit, but visually I think it does very little in actually drawing you into this undercroft or in through several alleyways to get to the site. Some more looks at the site in question in a bit more detail. Red indicates vehicle access. You can see the link to the Ring Road out this way, and then blue is main pedestrian routes. The thicker the line, the more.
Excuse me, Matt.
Sorry?
Are we supposed to be seeing something on screen besides just your face?
Yeah, you are.
Because all I can see is your face.
Okay. I'm not sure. It says I'm screen sharing, so I'm not sure.
I can see you. I can see the screen share.
I can see you and the map.
Yeah, no problem. Just tap on the screen share.
Shall I carry on, or?
Yes, carry on. Sorry, Paul. It'll show up on the video afterwards. Sorry.
Okay, sorry about that. Do you want me to unscreen share and try again? No. Okay. So vehicle access and pedestrian access. So the main kind of core, well, one of the core design aspects of the market was to counter the traditional way that the market was designed, in that you had a rectangular footprint and then you had a central entrance, and all of the stores wanted to be closest to the main entrance in order to get the most thoroughfare through and the most passing trade. The market ingeniously, and it's actually retained in the design proposal, alleviates this by increasing the permeability of the site, by increasing the number of access routes both into the site and then into the market itself. And the stalls were actually chosen by lot randomly, so there wasn't actually any favour given to any stalls, which was a radical way of doing it. Unfortunately, this does mean that there isn't one identifiable main access point into the market, and that is something that can be utilised to fully put the market back on the map, so to speak. I think the main issue has been that the market has kind of been almost like closed off by basically by Sheldon Square and a city arcade, and if you were to attract a lot of people along this market way by perhaps demolishing some of this or doing other things that we'll get onto later on, then it would attract a lot more people into the market. Other things I want to point out is that there's a very weird microclimate with the wind in this area. If anybody has gone down Queen Victoria Road, turned this corner around IKEA, they know what I'm talking about. I think it's something to do with the wind that comes over the Ring Road junction, and then it gets funneled down into by the large massing of IKEA. But that's pure, like, that's just me making things up, but it is very, very obvious that there is a large wind tunnel coming in into the site from that area, and that's going to be utilised in the design later on as well. That doesn't really help the amount of noise that's coming in from the Ring Road junction and the busy Queen Victoria Road as well. So that's the main pedestrian access through the site, and that's kind of what we're dealing with. That doesn't take into consideration the access point from the roof or through from the lower precinct, but this is kind of the main exterior pedestrian routes through. And basically all the way through it, you're either in back of house or next to horrible hoarding or in an alleyway. As you can see that down here as well. So it's not great. It needs to improve, basically. From an interior point of view, and from the feel and kind of the community aspect of it, it serves both traditional and more kind of like modern, multicultural products. And the people that bring the products to the marketplace adds a place where anybody in the city of Coventry can feel at home. And it's one of the few places where there is still a very, very good communal feel to a traditional high street, basically. Excuse me. The best stalls, are the ones that do the best, are fresh fruit and vegetables, and there are long established fishmongers and butchers as well, but unfortunately the market is failing to meet its full capacity. There are still quite a lot of vacant stalls, and I think that isn't necessarily so much the market, although I guess we'll come to this slide, we should probably go into it a little bit more detail and give three groups a voice. I asked the question of 25 people in the market, three groups: stallholders, visitors, and then I spoke to the manager. I asked them what would improve the market, and then this was without leading. This wasn't necessarily a questionnaire. These were the topics that came up as a result, and how many people mentioned it just in their conversations after the question was asked. The few things that I won't go through everything, but the few things I want to draw attention to is that it's definitely less busy. It needs a younger audience. It needs to modernise. The wayfinding needs to be better. And the thing that I was linking into before is that mainly it's put down to online competition. 7 out of 8 stallholders said it was mainly due to the less busy aspect of the market is due to online competition. So they're the kind of the main things that this design is seeking to resolve. They're the problems. And so I'll go into the exterior first. For the externals, it's grade 2 listed as mentioned. It has a indelible mark on the city, both in terms of its history and what it gives to the city now and its people. And for that reason, my examiners actually grilled me quite heavily on this. I chose to retain the market in everything but half of its roof, which we'll get to in a bit. It forms part of the city, which I think gives one day we'll be looking back on this and seeing concrete construction in this era as traditional, and then we might have a different view on our emotions that we attach to the architecture. And for that reason, not only for that reason, because it is a perfectly usable building, that too, it's been retained. To increase the sight lines from the Sheldon Square and also from Market Way, something had to be done. Either areas were demolished, as can be seen in the sketch at the bottom here, which I deliberately restricted myself to, because of course all of this is academic. I could have decided to demolish the entire row there, which I haven't done, but I decided to maintain the boundary of the site. So the other way of doing it was to increase the massing, which has been done on the west side, retaining the circular layout of the market as is. And then to fully utilise the vacant piece of land out towards the east, going down towards Queen Victoria Road, I basically extrapolated the height of a double-storey extension on the east side downwards, and it came roughly smartly to about where the pavement and the actual site meet. The top precedent there is a brilliant example of public space, which the roof being used as a public space, which was a key principle when the market was originally designed. Although it isn't necessarily public space, it's usable space. And the subsequent rooftop car parks were a good expansion and a good innovation in overall city master planning when they were done. The market was kind of seen as like a main kind of example of innovation in terms of how a roof is used. This ramp is then chiselled out. See a similar sort of thing to the Meccano Delft University of Technology library down there in the bottom to create a main entrance. Now, it's already been identified that area, I look onto Queen Victoria Road, and especially from the Ring Road as well, is right for a main entrance, and it seemed fitting that that it should be kind of chiselled out of the form, the new form, while maintaining the existing circular emphasis that you get from the bulging sides as you look at it. In terms of the interior, it is vast. I can't, it's really bad, but it's either 60 or 80 meters is the diameter of the space. So it is a very, very large space. And because we're increasing the height of it, it increases the importance of getting natural lighting in. So several axial circular roof lights were basically dropped in to provide that. And these were set out according to the 13 existing roof lights which exist on the retained raised skylight in the existing market. Some of these were raised, and going back to what I was saying about different green spaces having different feels, whether or not it's an intimate space, whether it's somewhere where I can feel enclosed and kind of like to myself, or whether or not it's kind of exposed, perhaps more open, perhaps more people are passing through. This is about creating both types of spaces. So there is a large, vast area, 68 meters squared, whichever one it is, and then there are separate areas where more intimate relationships can kind of like develop and evolve. People can sit with their kids without feeling like they're being watched or hawked at. And then a further definition of these spaces was a set of terraces, and what this does is basically give different identities to different spaces. Ramping space isn't necessarily very, very easy to utilize. So this is about creating a set of different steps, each one with its own identifiable space, its use, and while still maintaining that circular overall footprint that the market is famous for. And this is perhaps the final one for the external development. It's perhaps the most contentious. to control the views, to control the noise pollution that we've identified, as well as the wind microclimate, it had to be wrapped. And this is kind of like the last stage in defining overall spaces. So this is defining the market rooftop space as its own space, distinct from each of the adjacent areas, which you may or may not agree don't necessarily have the best views. I'm talking about like the Iceland building on the top of City Arcade, that sort of thing. So to control the views and to make it feel like this is a separate green space that is an oasis of calm and comfort and somewhere where you can rest and forget about the rest of the city, it had to be wrapped. Different ways of doing this include a roof or a mass, or just kind of like pillars indicating an area or space, but I chose to do this in a wrap, which we'll get to more particulars on that later. Now, combating some of the interior problems, the main issue with the interior that was identified from the survey was that it was really, really hard for a new visitor to find their way around the market. And looking at the layout of the existing, it's perhaps not as clear, I'll have to zoom in here, but if somebody is standing out on one of the edges, it is very, very hard for them to get an unbroken view of anything or anyone. And each of those stores are each fighting for their own products to be on display in the most, not garish, but outlandish and attention-grabby way possible. So to basically simplify will go a long way. And that was the first step. All the stores will be rearranged. Different ways of doing this can be looked at, are looked at. The first is kind of a distinction between the double height and single height spaces, the top photograph there. Alternatively, you can have a physical guiding element, whatever that may be, as in the bottom photograph there, which guides you along and clearly indicates an area of travel. Another contentious point, the number of stalls were halved, and the reason for this is to increase demand. There is a later stage in the design which allows for more stalls to be put back as demand increases, which I do foresee it happening. But this is to better match the actual amount of stall holders in the market currently. The stores aren't very good at utilising the floor space that's been given. There's something to be said for a nice flowing feel, a lot of circulation space, but that doesn't really bode well in a commercial setting. Several things have been done intentionally to counter an enclosed corridor feel, including raising the roof height in certain areas, and also certain intricacies around how the stalls are physically put together. But overall, the stalls have been deepened to increase the physical footprint of each of them. And then this is just marrying in with some of the existing external changes, So the entrance has been moved to allow entry there from the westernmost point. The other area was reducing the need for the back of house externally down the south and southeast side. This solution, I'm not entirely sure it would 100% work, but the idea was to give over some of the ground floor plan over to back of house, dedicated back of house. I understand that there is a basement floor of the market, I think, which is primarily as back of house. So allowing also individual back of house to each of the stores means that there is less need for deliveries to come in everywhere. Hopefully the deliveries that were coming in around the outside, the exterior, down on the south side, will now come in towards, as you can see here indicated, above, I think it's towards New Look, exactly opposite where the kind of that cash point is near IKEA, over Queen Victoria Road. So that's reducing the amount of commercial vehicles in the back of house need on the south end of the site. Larger area was given over to cafe and community space. A greater drive is given in the city-wide ethos for more kind of events, more cultural outpourings, so to speak. And so the finished floor plan is given over to a multifunctional space which can be used for art exhibitions, music stuff, advertising, even a spill out of the stalls if needs be in the future, or even if it's a travelling market, so to speak. We have like farmers markets or individual ones which could be up for a week or so in that space and then move on. And then this space is also filled out to the exterior. Coventry has obviously a really, really good track record of putting on a lot of free cultural events throughout the year, and this is only set to increase with the City of Culture bid as well. So that's for that. So this is a kind of the finalised ground floor plan. You see the stalls in blue, the cafe in the back of house next to it, towards this side. The main entrance being chiselled out of the new ramp, and then the multifunctional space towards the south being linked in with the external one just spoken about. I mentioned very, very briefly at the beginning, or towards the beginning, that it's going to be largely maintained except for the roof. The roof's been half demolished to allow double height space as you come into the main entrance, and the rest of it is turned into a mezzanine. These allow, at the moment indicated as 2 restaurants, but this has kind of been left undetailed to allow for a spill out of stalls in the future if needs be. So this is kind of, it's flexible space again for the market to manage if demand picks up again. And then finally, a new mezzanine is added for back of house and storage, for offices, for security, for the manager and other staff members. And then finally, probably the most important one is the rooftop, given over primarily to green space, different areas, different terraces for different uses. See the main entrance of the rooftop space being on the Queen Victoria link, coming up this path. Each of the terraces is given over to a slightly different use, these 3 being different types of gardens designed by Coventry designers, focusing on water, rock and grass. And then we have a 5-a-side pitch at the top, and then 2 children's play areas, and finally something akin to an outside gym. So it's not necessarily green space, but very, very much linked in with the idea of green space. And all of these are connected by a central green which maintains the pitch of the ramp, which also reduces things like board games and stuff like that, which is perhaps where other areas are best suited to that. So it's all about smaller design choices made to ensure that different activities can be incorporated. As well as human residents of the city, we need to look out for other residents, and several areas are given over to biodiverse planting, although it's obviously going to be seen that the overall landscaping strategy will be taking biodiversity very seriously overall, so it won't only be constrained to one particular area, and we'll get to an innovation in that a bit later as well. So this is the finalised kind of form for the wrap. The material chosen was based on a colour matched CLT or glulam timber structure, and it's colour matched to the sandstone Coventry bears some of its heritage to. Some of it is suspended in areas, and some of it forms seating. It's kind of like this moulded, almost aerodynamic sort of shape, and what it does is link the 3 key kind of public nodes. The first being the area outside IKEA on Queen Victoria Road, the second being Shelburne Square, and the third being where Coventry Point is currently being demolished along Market Way. So each of those areas kind of has like an outstretched tendril that is reaching out and trying to draw people in, giving a visual reference and making sure that people know exactly where the market is just from that very, very quick, easy visual connection. Because it's obviously green space, it had to represent the greenery of the space usage itself. For that, it has several pockets, or lots of pockets, several in each bay, that is given over to basically a suspended planter which has ivy draping in over the side. So the entire thing is kind of like termed as a green curtain, my examiners called it. So it's this wrapping green curtain that is both acting as a wayfinding tool, and is also providing shelter noise, and view management as well. So that's a section. You can see there the ground floor cafe space, and also the way that the central circulation space, demonstrated in each of the floor plans, cuts through each of the levels. You can also see some of the different areas for the natural lighting strategy there and there. And yeah, I think the one thing, other thing I wanted to point out was there's 3 entrances primarily to the rooftop, linking the rooftop and the exterior and interior. First is to the main entrance on the ground floor here. The second is this circulation space, which services all the levels. And the third is this lift, which goes to the very, very top point of the market. The beauty with the ramped nature of this is that it allows wheelchair access all the way through. Each of the terraces has its own threshold level threshold, sorry. And additionally, there are lifts both to the centre point and to the highest point of the market rooftop. So that's kind of an early sketch that was done to demonstrate the main entrance view. And the key aspect that I wanted to get across here was that if somebody came for just the rooftop space, they would immediately identify that there was something internal worth going to. And exactly the same for the other way around. If someone was going to the market, it's very, very obvious and demonstrable that they can get to the rooftop space through another way. So to make yeah. And then this is kind of like the rear view. So this isn't much a main entrance, but it's kind of demonstrating the way that the timber CLT kind of guides you in, that even though it doesn't physically continue, it's made to look like it continues from above the undercroft to below it, kind of drawing you in and making sure that even without the demolition of that area, which was thought about in one of the early stages, it's quite obvious that in order to get to the area above those buildings, you had to go underneath the undercroft in order to get there. Now, this was something that was requested to me by my examiners on my first crit. It's a bit out there. It's a way to bring the biodiversity of the proposal to the wider city. The existing kind of skylight of the market has been extrapolated upwards. If I flip back to a section here, and on the top of there is what is in this sketch obviously a biodiverse platform. Now, the way that this works, or is seen to work, is that the market works with a passive ventilation strategy. Expelling exhaust air, which is normally a lot higher water content and is also warmer, out through the central circulation vents. Aided with the natural planting that is on top of that biodiverse platform, is seen to spread seeds via the air throughout the city, primarily using the microclimate which we discussed at the beginning of this presentation. So instead of being purely southwesterly, it's more westerly. Yeah. So some of the areas identified for this include the Bullyard, Coventry University Square, and also Broadgate as well. And each of these areas would have a planter, partially planted with wildflowers and partially given over to a sculpture that kind of like matches in with the timber of the market proposal. The idea being that the seeds would disperse across the city in each of these planters, partially helped by birds, which would come to eat the produce from the market, and then make nests in each of the sculptures, bringing with not only with the wind dispersal seeds, but also the dropping dispersal. And then this is kind of that conclusion for the kind of the sketch process. This is the interior. So the half of the roof has been demolished. The main structure has been maintained. So the radial beams that are all going in towards the centre have been maintained, and then you can see in the centre kind of the skylight, the circular skylight being maintained and turned into a kind of a glass rotunda, which is linking each of the internal levels and the rooftop garden as well. So that's kind of like a more, well, I guess you call it a more realistic visualization of what could be for that interior space, that circulation. And then this is taken on one of the restaurant levels. So you see some of the large surrounds of the skylights coming down, linking with one of the identifiable colours of the city in the green travertine, or the weather copper. And then this is also pushing light even further down into the ground floor through large apertures in the first floor new mezzanine. This was just done basically to capture some of the plays on light that comes through. You can see the timber structure. This is on the first floor, sorry, on the mezzanine, looking down into the ground floor. And the plays of light that kind of bring the ivy into the interior. There's a large glazed curtain wall going around the edge of the circular building at the first floor, a new glazed curtain wall. And you can quite clearly see the exposed timber structure, as well as the planters that are each in those kind of crisscross structural bracings as well. This is kind of the main entrance visualization. You can see the paving is meant to do a job of drawing people in up the ramp. And you can also see the suspended element of the timber wrap going across there, and also a lot of the structural supports which bear some planters. And then this is the primary main entrance, the new main entrance into the market. All others have been maintained still. So that's kind of like the vertical link that you get looking up. It's a very artistic one, of course, with some of the planters in the ivy draping down, bared against kind of the harsh concrete, which has been maintained and left exposed to kind of reference back to the heritage of the Festival of Britain, kind of modernist, brutalist architecture. And then this is probably a view that you never actually get if it was built, because it's about first floor looking inwards. Perhaps a window cleaner or somebody would, but this just to get across the connection between the interior and the exterior, and the way that the light can play with the different kind of like textures and colors that come through the leaves and the timber, that make sure that when somebody is in the market on the ground floor, or even on the first floor, there is still that connection with nature that draws people upwards up onto the rooftop space. It's of course aided by the strong verticality of the glulam vertical columns, and that's a concept I should have probably kept out. Sorry, apologies for that. This is the view eastwards, basically from the top of the market. You see there in the centre the biodiverse platform with its vents. You can see the AstroTurf pitch at the very top. And then several children's play areas, just an edge of the gym there, outdoor gym. This is the central kind of green the area for relaxation, kind of broken up with different trees and shrubbery. And then these are probably the areas where most people will be using, which will be kind of pleasure gardens, so to speak, similar to how the Herbert Gardens are done at the minute. And then this is the biodiverse platform, just taken to illustrate to the examiners the flora that can be achieved. So in terms, these are the final 3 slides, I promise. In terms of matching the needs that were originally identified in the survey, it's less busy. That's clearly identified. The reasons for the drop in demand are perhaps it needs a younger audience, it's competing online, it needs to modernise. A lot of answers that large department stores are investing in, heavily investing in, is making their shopping experience experiential. And that is to add something which online shopping just doesn't and cannot live up to. And I think this is a very, very unique way of creating that. People will come to the market via the park, and people will go to the park via the market. It works very, very well together. They both have parallel ambitions in terms of serving communities and drawing people in. Second, The wayfinding is combated by a central circulation space that everybody can orient themselves around. There's a clear visual connection on entering the market with this circulation space in the centre, and then people can move around the market, keeping the circular fashion, which is rightfully famous for, but at the same time still being able to not get lost and feel slightly unwary. Additionally, there are large surrounds in kind of the underside of the roof and in the interior spaces, which again add to distinguishable areas which you can orient yourselves around. And then finally, better access. The wrapping timber structure acts as a visual reference to each of the 3 key nodes that we spoke about, and the form cutout clearly indicates where the main entrance is to the market, which is also on the most trafficked area, the area directly on Queen Victoria Road. I think that is the final slide. Other than that, there's 2 websites. That's my main website, mwarchitecture.com. And then mattarchitecture.wordpress.com is my blog, where you can probably find more information actually, and on my website, come to think of it. So if you want to find out more, then go to either of those 2 places. I've also got a video as well. I assume I'm okay to show that? Okay. Right. So this again is more of an illustration tool than it is something which is set in stone. There we go. There we are. Thank you very much. I probably should stop the share now. Is that right?
Yes, please. Can people see the chat function?
Yeah.
If you want to ask a question, can you just do me a note on chat, or do a note to everyone on chat, and I'll make a list and we'll try and do it in a civilised way. Vince, do you want to start by saying something?
Yes, first of all, I have to say thank you, Matthew, for a very, very creative and beautiful presentation and take on a iconic building. I do have a couple of questions that worry me. First of all, the very beautifulness of your presentation. Earlier on in your presentation, you mentioned green spaces, of the Greyfriars Green Walk. I really get where you're coming from on that. You also mentioned Lady Herbert's Gardens. It's a cesspit. It was beautiful, and now it's a cesspit. There's a lot of landscaping and garden work involved with that. And for instance, if you started doing it now, it may be ready for the City of Culture. But you can bet your bottom dollar that at the end of the City of Culture, the city is not going to be able to find the funds to maintain it, because it can't maintain what we've got now. And if anything, if Lady Herbert's Gardens got anything to go on, I'll tell you what those private little cubicles are going to be used for. I'll leave it at that. Secondly, within the building itself, as it stands at the moment, and a part of the citation from the English Heritage listing is the fact that there are artworks within that building, particularly around the wall, that mural around the wall. I didn't see that you had thought about what you were going to do with that. So they're my main points. One, it looks good now. You know, what's it going to look like when the gardens haven't been tended, when you can't walk through it without treading over used condoms or joint ends or needles, like you can in Lady Herbert's Garden? And what are you going to do with the artwork? It would be nice if we could bank on something like that this city could be proud of for 5 or 10 years' time, and not somewhere where you would fear to take visitors from outside of the city, like Lady Herbert's Gardens is now.
Yeah, so that's two good questions. The first is obviously about maintenance, and I think the bounce back that I'd have for that is that it's obviously an academic proposal, and it's more trying to understand an area where we can solve a problem using theoretical means. It's not meant to be a serious proposal. It's not going in for a pre-application or anything like that. It's meant to, as a first year architecture student, stimulate and to be a problem to be solved. It's not necessarily a realistic solution. It is just a solution, and it's about forming it, designing it, justifying the development and how you got there. So the second question, I think, was about, was it about, no, first one was maintenance, wasn't it?
Well, it was maintenance, yeah, okay. I get where you're coming from on that, and fair enough. The artworks, which are, the artwork that I'm aware of, maybe more Paul will tell me, within the building, it would have been nice if you'd have thought about incorporating those in some way.
Yeah, so the ones that I identified, the key areas along those lines, the artwork, rightfully so, near the manager's office, I think towards the back of the building, they're maintained. And then the other area for kind of cultural significance was the roundabout, which has been taken out and popped in the exterior, which I didn't actually show the visualization for. But towards the south, in that area of external, which I'm hoping is going to be a new pedestrian kind of area, thoroughfare, so that it's reinstated as an area for external community kind of get-togethers, essentially.
It was always outside anyway.
Sorry?
It was outside originally, as you probably know.
Yeah, it was in that area, and then it was moved inside. Yeah, I know. I came across that. So it's basically reinstated, albeit without the. I think there was a building that was slightly snaking around it, so it's been reinstated aside from that.
Right, Terry's the next question. Can you unmute yourself, Terry?
Okie doke. Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. A lot of exciting ideas there, and that I really enjoyed. Just two little points. At the moment, of course, it's a car park on the top, and there is access, car access, obviously, to the low precinct car park. There's also a pedestrian access to the lower precinct when you go down the ramp or you go down the stairs just inside. Did you ever think about, whether when you were doing this, whether those sort of access to these two places would be retained in some way? Obviously not because it's not going to be a car park anymore on there, but a pedestrian access into the car park.
Yeah, so there is actually still access from the car park. I believe well, there's two sections, isn't it? Because you can actually get onto that roof in two different ways.
Yes, you can. Yeah.
There's the car park opposite IKEA, and then there's that circular ramp that's a bit further round towards Greyfriars Green. So both of those points have been maintained. The one, I think the more problematic one is probably the one closer to Greyfriars Green, because at the moment I think you can either get on it or off it, but you can't do the other one.
That's right.
So it would have to work with perhaps a traffic light signal or something like that. But both accesses and both kind of areas will be obviously segregated as a result of the middle section, the market being turned to a green space. But both areas will be maintained, both from a vehicle and a pedestrian access route. The other side, the car park that's opposite IKEA, there is still a pedestrian access in these proposals to get onto the roof from that car park. I'm not entirely sure how much that is going to be of merit, because I'm not entirely sure why you'd go through a car park to get to the green space.
If you park your car in the car park and then you wanted to go onto the roof, as it were, and go directly onto it, that was one way. The other one, it was the pedestrian exit from the roof down to the with the ramp going down to the lower precinct, which goes onto the upper story of the lower precinct. And then as you go in, immediately on the right, there are stairs that go down into the Sherborne Arcade. Had you seen that? Did you?
Yeah. So that comes out on the first floor outside New Look, isn't it?
That's right.
Yeah. So that, again, that's been maintained, and the access level has been increased because of the way that the ramp works in the proposal. As you come onto the top of the market rooftop, it's slightly increased, but it's no more than 300-400 mil. So there is a slight increase in that, but the pedestrian access is still maintained.
Right. Okay.
The next person is Graham. Can you unmute yourself, Graham?
Hold on. Yeah. Okay. I've unmuted it. Thought the presentation was good, but I'm not very keen on ivy because it tends to overgrow everywhere, and most places you see where they've got ivy, it's not very well maintained. So I'd have concerns about that. Is either not do it or put some other plant.
Yeah, I think perhaps I'm a bit too hasty in using the word ivy. I think that sort of thing would be designed out by a landscape architect who'd know his stuff. But the research that I did I came across several species that were evergreen, which is very important, and didn't easily lose their leaves, but also hyperallergenic. So ones which weren't basically causing people to have allergic reactions. Now, I'm not in a place to tell you exactly what species those are. I have no clue, but I know that they exist. And they would suit this sort of use very well. But again, it goes back to an earlier question about maintenance, which of course comes down to cost. So it is a very, I think open green spaces are very, very costly money sink. And I don't think this is going to be any different, truth be told. But I don't think that was really where, I think if I'd considered that, this entire project would have been a non-starter in the first place, which is, it's kind of outside the realms of an academic project in a sense. So I didn't concern myself too much with the economic niceties.
Yeah, okay. Good.
The only point I wanted to make, this is Janice.
Just, can we do it in order, please?
Sorry?
Could Tara's next, please?
Hiya. Hi Matt. I really loved your proposal, and I really liked how you kind of looked at making it into an experience going shopping, particularly trying to link in families and everything. I remember when I went to the market when I was little, the thing I loved about it was going on the roundabout, and that was what kind of dragged me in to go shopping with my mum. And I'm imagining those play areas and different things would be a great kind of lure for that kind of thing. Also bringing the shops together, you know, the stores together in one space. I tend to go in there and I'll like get a bit lost, and it's like, you know, I've used it for years, but I'll still go in the wrong direction and end up walking the long way around, you know. So I think that would really help. Also, you've really made like some real nods to like loads of other things in the city. Really thought about, you know, the colours and the different things that you're using. I could see things that really look, you know, in keeping with the cathedral, and even the circular glass rotunda that you're looking at kind of nods to like the round cafe as well. But I was just wondering, the rooftop area, I love that, and I was imagining you could even like maybe have a beehive or something up there. But have you considered anything that's like a bit more undercover? So that would be great in the summer and when things are really nice, but I'm just wondering when the weather's not so great, what would you do up there?
Really good question. Kind of blindsided me a little bit. I think the only bounce back I could perhaps have on that is that my idea for the three main kind of garden terraces was to have an open competition for designers at Coventry to design themselves. And I guess one of the stipulations for that could be that they have to design in an element of shelter, whether that be like a pagoda or something akin to that. Other than that, I'm not really sure. I think largely you'd have to basically put a roof on it or a section of it. And I think for when the green space is being utilised in its best possible way, which is in beautiful sunshine, that's going to do quite a lot of damage to that experience potentially. So it's certainly something I'd look at, and truthfully I haven't really considered it, so your question is a really good one. But it'd have to be done really, really carefully in a way that's perhaps adaptable, flexible, or isn't necessarily too overbearing in a way. So
it's maybe even like side canopies or something could work, you know, that kind of came in, so you've got the edge bit at least was undercover. Yeah.
In actual fact, one of the early concepts that I had was very similar to this is silly, a circus tent. So it had kind of draping canopies that would raise to a single kind of raised pole in the centre, and then you'd have elements cut out of these canopies to allow the trees to shoot through them. And that's a bit more pie in the sky perhaps than what this turned out to be. But yeah, that was to basically still create a sense of kind of like a visual focus, so that other people around the locality can still home in and still kind of see that something's obviously there. But yeah. So it was thought about from an early stage, but I think for kind of like the cost benefit of when it's going to be used best in the summertime, hopefully in similar sort of summer to what we've had lately, it would probably be, I hadn't thought about it in so much as justified in that sense.
Thank you. Simon, you wanted to come in next? Simon, I'll unmute you. Simon?
Hello, is it me?
Yeah.
Thanks, John. John, I was just, there's a couple of things I'm concerned about. Obviously, if you want to turn the market into an art space, we've got a couple of art spaces around the city that might suffer. And I'm also concerned about the CDM requirements, about how this roof maybe maintained? Who looks after it? Where does the water go? And you know, and glulam beams, Matt. I don't think, you know, glulam beams are things that we need to have as a city built on oak. We're just concerned about using cheap materials.
Okay. So for the first one, the maintenance, I think I got this right. The maintenance of the grass and your worries about.
Yeah, CDM, from a CDM point of view, Matt.
What particularly from a CDM point of view?
Well, how'd you get up? How'd you mow the grass on the roof, and how does it work? And who?
What does CDM mean?
Sorry.
Why don't you say what CDM means, please?
Oh, sorry, construction design management, which the architect would know about, but it's how you maintain buildings without putting people at risks.
So the core area where this is a risk, and I think you're talking about working from height, which of course is the leading cause of injuries to well, basically anybody maintaining a building, and also those building it. The main area of contention in that regard is the main central circulation roof, and that is a biodiverse platform. So the level of maintenance for something like that would be very, very low indeed. You'd have somebody very, very rarely go up there to check the M&E, similar as you would to have it on a roof maybe once a year. Other than that, people aren't, especially members of the public, aren't accessing that at all.
So as far as harvesting the waterfall from the roof and the capacity that's in that area, I mean, we've checked inverts and things like that. We've done engineering reports. You know, that's an ancient part of the city that you're proposing this new fancy structure, but has the research been done to think that it can handle itself?
In terms of what? Sorry, the
invert capacities and things for that area. I know it's the market's a very old building. You plan on using the same sewage capacity?
Potentially. The special individual compartmentalized, it's essentially a green wall system, the roof. So instead of being a very traditional lawn, it's actually a section of, it's a hybrid between a green wall and a green roof system. So you have a set of semi-permeable membranes that are all slotted in together, which slow the movement of water, rainwater, off the roof. So in terms of what is there at the moment, which is literally basically a bowl, it's collecting the water and going straight into the system, it would actually filtrate the water and it would release it in a lot slower state than what it's doing at the minute.
That's what I'm saying, Matt. So this is the selling factor of the new building, of how we harvest the new water on the new building, and this is how we promote the new building.
Can be, yeah. That wasn't my prime thought at all. I gave quite a lot of thought as to whether it could be done or not, and for that to happen, that amount of green space on a ramp, as well as the elements that are on the terraces, it was no way feasible going to be a traditional kind of lawn. Aside from the issues with the water running straight off of it, you basically wouldn't be able to keep the grass fed, essentially. So it had whatever it was had to stop the sudden ingress of water coming off of it.
Next is David Fryer. David.
Thanks, John. Well, thanks, Matt. I really did enjoy it. I'm afraid I've got no practical, critical points to make at all. Like Terry, I was really excited by what you proposed, and it brought home to me that I wish more often that we could throw really awkward shapes at architects and then ask them to come up with solutions to the problem. Because the notion of what your entrance looked like from Victoria Road was really very exciting, and the idea of trying to get to the market at the moment if you're not familiar where it is, and also to try and make sense of it once you step inside. Despite it being a greatly loved institution, it certainly does need dealing with. But clearly, as a listed building, I realise the unfortunate impracticalities of putting it in place. But I was just so interested in your going through the process of trying to deal with the sort of problems that an architect is facing, and also trying to contextualise it into a local situation. So congratulations, and I did enjoy it. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Terry, did you want to come back? Need to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I was just really following on from what Simon said, talking about grass and all the rest of it. I mean, very often you get these almost self-maintaining sedum roofs rather than grass roofs. And, that just might be it's not really a question, it's just a point to raise. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah, so there's typically 3 different types.
Yeah.
Of a green roof, one of which, an extensive, I think it is, it's either intensive or extensive, I can always get the allows for essentially as close to grass as grass can be, in a contained system that doesn't allow for quick filtration of water away. It's actually really, really useful in terms of water retention and easing existing stresses on drainage systems. So that was technology looked at for justifying this large area of greenery.
Okay, Simon.
Here again, hello.
Yeah.
Get on here. I just want to touch back on the Matt. I'm sorry to keep going over this, but the glue lamp beams, I really feel, from I said before, city built on oak, that's not where we want to be going. From a maintenance point of view, I've got glue lamp beams outside the Herbert Art Gallery that takes me forever and a day to maintain. If we can just spend a little bit of money on the front end, and if I can say we can preserve the element of the Coventry Market. My auntie worked in there for 30 years, and when I was a boy, I used to go in and get a cheeky little stolen bag of fruit. And those oranges and satsumas and bananas were the great things in my life. So that's the element of the Coventry Market for me. We can keep that going, please. And if that can be fed into the design as well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Matthew.
Okay.
John?
Yes, I'll
Can I ask something?
Yes.
Sorry, I've been trying to get on, but
carry on, Peter.
it doesn't seem to have worked. Yeah, I was just going to say, follow up to some extent what David Fry said. Really, I mean, I think it's a very radical solution, if you like, for a building which I suspect in the future is going to need a very radical solution of some kind. But I just don't think it can, in its present form, ever get back to the kind of vibrancy that it once had. Still possesses to some extent. As we know, the world's moved on, and there are new generations to cater for in the future as well. I was struck, as David was, I think, by the entrance and making use of that terrible, empty, rubbishy space that's there at the moment. My only question, I suppose, is that there's some fairly undistinguished buildings on either side at the moment, which may or may not disappear in whatever city centre scheme comes forward. But also, really, most people who use the market at the moment don't approach from that side. They would probably approach through either Sherborne Arcade or through the lower through Market Way. And I wondered if it would take a big switch for people to come from outside the main shopping area, if you like, and particularly with IKEA disappearing, from a rather sort of windswept corner where at the moment there's nothing much else. Have you thought about that?
So Was that focusing on perhaps different entrances and perhaps like utilising both the well, I guess it's a potential benefit to IKEA going, and also the flexibility around the adjacent buildings, the Iceland on one side and the multi-storey car park on the other. I think well, it serves to show that Coventry City Council have been master planning areas of that site, and I think the overall area needs to have a fresh look overall. And I think the remit for this particular project was very constrained, and that was due to the brief given to us at university. It was actually a very, very large site, so I was half biting off more than I could chew. But from the research that I've done and from the proposals and the design development that I've had to do as a result of this project, I would say that trying to fit the market and make it achieve what it can achieve with the constraints of the adjacent buildings is not going to get the best out of the market whatsoever. The entire, yeah. And I think the issue with IKEA moving out is probably can be seen perhaps more positively in 20, 30 years. If something is very well done with it, then it will be negatively. And I just hope that there's that level of consultation done whenever or if ever the chance arises to do such a large development. I think that's touching on some elements of your questions. I hope.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, just add my thanks to Vince's. It's really good to see a process of thinking, and I think we're not looking at a final scheme here. We're looking at a process of thinking, and we as a society need to hold that concept when we look at City Centre South. We'll need the proponents of City Centre South to talk us through it in the same way that Matt has, explaining why they've come up with the solutions that they've come up with. So I think it puts us in good stead, because I think this summer we'll be seeing City Centre South come back into consultation, and perhaps we'll be a little bit better organised to think about it. Don't go, because Vince is going to now give us a review of what we've been doing over the past month, and he's going to give you the programme for what's coming up. So Vince, over to you again.
Just unmute myself. Okay, and thank you again, Matthew. That really was a impressive and inspiring presentation. It would be nice to see something like that come to fruition, and if it did, I hope you got the contract. We've got a program for the, let's say, predictable or almost foreseeable future. Monday, the 5th of the 6th, sorry, my glasses, the 8th of the 6th, we've got Trish Willits. On the 22nd of the 6th, Kathy Hunt is now going to be able to do her delayed presentation. I'm looking forward to that. There's been a bit of controversy on social media about one or two aspects of the presentation. And on the 6th of the 7th, Peter James Knight is going to be gracing us with his presence. We've set up forgive me if I go over something that has already been gone over, but we've set up a subgroup to promote the idea of a new vision for Coventry. As we come out of the lockdown, Trevor may want to say a bit more than that, but basically a lot of people are fed up with this quarantine that we've all been under, quite necessarily. We're bearing it quite well. And there have been some positive aspects coming out of this as well. The cleaner air, the quieter roads, the safer roads, and people are starting to think in a different way. So the subgroup is looking at a stance that we could possibly put forward to suggest that this is the kind of future that we would support following the lockdown. We're developing plans for a civic day on the 20th of June, handing over our social media channels to a group of young people who will show photos and videos of what makes them proud of our city. And really, I think I've banged on before, and I'll do it again because that's what I do, about when I was a jammy-faced little kid, I was proud of Coventry. I didn't think there was any other city in the known universe that was as good as Coventry. And I kind of got the impression over, maybe I'm just getting older and more cynical, that maybe the kids didn't think that anymore. And it would be nice if they did. And it would be nice if they informed us that they did. So it's a neat product. And Nicola might be able to say some more about that for us. We've been looking ahead of when there'll be a consultation on City Centre South, which is what John just mentioned. So this particular presentation, we really do look forward to seeing more similar to that, and we look forward to maybe the people of the city having an input to it. We're talking to various people about tree planting. We've got literally hundreds of thousands of trees that we can plant. It's so where are we going to put them? I think it would be nice if we could get more green as we take more vehicles off the road. Les has sent in our comments on civic to listed building. We don't like the proposal for obvious reasons. They've done nothing to address all the main criteria as to why that building and courtyard was grade 2 listed in the first place. And we've secured a new venue for our meetings when they restart, hopefully in September, but obviously we can't be firm about that. The new venue is in the old grammar school. You won't have to wear your thermal underwear, as we maybe sometimes had to do. But we have agreed to make a donation to the Shopford Theatre, who provided us with a home when we were homeless. They rescued us off the streets, and they've been very welcoming and helpful to us. So we've decided that although we're leaving them, they do need funding like everyone else, so we're going to be making them a donation. So if Trevor wants to add more, perhaps no, or Nicola.
John.
Hey, Vince.
Hi, Nicola. Would you like? To, Trevor's up.
What do you want me to add?
If you got anything that you'd like to say about the project for Civic Day.
Yeah, we've got a number of teenagers and young people that absolutely love Coventry, born and raised here, and they've got so much to say about the place. And they've got, although they're only young, they've got a lot of memories growing up, and they want to share it, and they want to have their civic voice heard.
Fabulous. Fabulous.
Trevor?
Yes, just to quickly say something about this paper that we put together on, like a new vision for the city centre. It isn't just about the improved air quality and transport, but of course the fundamental problems that the economy, the national economy, the city's economy is going to be in the next few years will mean that, for example, retailing in the way that we've known it in the city centre just will not be sustainable. Development coming into the city centre, such as City Centre South, will have to fundamentally alter. It can't contain the retail element that previously was being talked about. So we've got to look for new opportunities, new uses in the city centre, uses that are really going to be useful for the city itself. And so that would certainly, in my mind, include an element of social housing, given the extreme shortage there is in Coventry. So we're trying to explore what some of those new possibilities might be, but at the same time to win interest from others, so there can be a bigger debate in Coventry about the sort of city centre we want to have in the future. And it's, you know, we've got literally a once in a lifetime opportunity here. You know, in Coventry, they had that post-war rebuilding. Now, given the crisis that we will have in the economy, we've got another opportunity to rethink how we want to use the city centre.
Trevor, can I just come in on that from my Coventry bid point of view? The new app that the government are trialling in Coventry is called Bubble. I'll share that with members after this conversation, and you can basically buy everything and be insured with everything, and so you don't need to go to the shops in town, which is worrying because no one will go to the shops in town. And it's how do these businesses, you know, how do these businesses survive? But more worrying, what I've found from some of my university friends today is that next year's curriculum for Warwick University and Coventry University are all going to be online. So all the students are going to stay at home, which is devastating news for as far as the city economy is concerned, if it's true. If you think of all of our Chinese and Canadian students won't come back to the city now after this and do their things online, which is devastating if it's true.
Okay, Mark, Stefan, do you want to make a comment? You need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Thanks very much. Very interesting presentation there. Couple of things. I liked the tendril idea to show people entrances to the market. That is terribly difficult at the moment. I tend to use the Sherburn Arcade because it's easy to do. And like everybody, I get lost in that market every time I go in. I use it quite often. So I like the layout idea. I like the ramp idea, but as has been mentioned, it's not a main entrance. But you've got to do something with that space because it's just horrible. So yeah, it's a good idea. I like the fact that, you know, as you said, if you're going to the market, you see the ramp to the garden. If you're going to the garden, you see the entrance to the market. So I think that marries those two things very well indeed. But other than that, yeah, just thanks very much. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Nicola, do you want to say a little more? Nicola? No.
John, sorry.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to have the last word?
Can you pull me up to speed? I missed that last bit.
You just sent me a chat message, and I was wondering if you wanted to say anything to everyone here.
Oh yes, so keep your eye on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. So the Coventry Society youth want to talk about how they see Coventry in the future, what they want, how they want to live, and what they expect.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed the meeting. I certainly have. It's been enlightening and very interesting. Our next meeting is the 8th of June, and we've got Trish Willett, who's also from the BID. The BID is the Business Improvement District. So no doubt Bubble or whatever other retail methods are current at that time. We'll get briefed on, and it'll carry on our discussion about city centre. So I'll close the meeting now. Does anyone else want to say anything before we go? No? Well, thank you all very much, and I'll see you on the 8th of June.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye.
Thanks, John. Bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye.